Peace and happy new year, soul family. Adam Jackson here with another episode of the Sacred Sons podcast. This is going to be a conversation for the men today. Brothers, if you have kids listening, tell them to put their earmuffs on because today we're going to be talking about your cock, your balls, your dick, your testes, your
Cojones?
erection, your cojones. What else you got? Let's get them all out now. So when we get in the conversation, it'll flow. Because today we're bringing through Dr. Jonathan Brajtbord. He's a urologist, and I'm stoked to invite in. I'm appointing you, Jonathan, as our medical doc, our guru for these issues that men face. You know, and we talk a lot about the emotional, mental, and spiritual embodiment. But when it comes down to it, it's our physical embodiment. And for men, our physical embodiment is directly connected to our life force energy. You know, we are creators, and at that intersection of our unit, you know, there's a lot of power. So I'm stoked to drop in with you today. And Jonathan is also a part of our community, the 33. The 33 is a 12-month container focused on collaboration, men's counsel, community, and contribution. And this is like our tip of the pyramid, tip of the spear men's circle at Sacred Sons. I'm a part of it. Kevin Walton, Aubert, J-Mac, the whole squad is a part of the 33. Throughout the year, we have 3 prime level events coming up. First, in 2023, we'll be heading down to Tepoztlan, Mexico. Jonathan, what do you got to say about the 33?
Oh my God. I mean, for me, getting the invitation to join the 33 and stepping into that container, that brotherhood with, you know, with you, with Aubert and J-Mac and, you know, Kareem and Big Joe and all these guys who I looked up to when I kind of started this journey, right? And these are these men who are really embodying what it means to be an embodied masculine leader in themselves, in their own communities, in their work, and really putting themselves out there. And I was like, these are the men that I want to be around. These are the men that I want to surround myself with. So I am so stoked to be part of it and honored to be diving in with it. I think it's gonna be a really great year, and I'm super excited for it.
Beautiful. So let's get into it. Our guest today, Dr. Jonathan Brajtbord. He's a urologist. He's a husband and father of 3, and he is helping professional men and fathers do the inner work required to have an intentional life, a healthy body, and a great relationship. Please welcome Jonathan Brajtbord.
Thank you, Adam. Man, what an introduction. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, as a urologist, you must get the craziest questions. You must hear the depth of not only like the crazy stories and what happens with men and their penises, but also like probably some of the shame, probably some of the stories, you know, that go along, you know, with these things. So I'm looking forward to dropping in on all things, you know, really around health and wellness for us as men. But before we get into that, it's the beginning of the year. I want to like take a deep breath for ourselves. Come into this space, come into this new year thriving and shining in prosperity, calling it all in. And Jonathan, on this beautiful day, what is most alive within you?
So Jonathan checking in from outside of Boston, Massachusetts. So what is most alive in me right now is really possibility, right? So new year, it has not gotten off to a flawless start.
Nope, not at all.
And so, you know, it's, but really, you know, new years are new possibilities, right? And I've developed a practice over the last couple of years with my wife where we kind of reflect on 2022 at the end, what we're proud of, what we're grateful for, and then really kind of look to the next year and what it is that we're calling into our life and into our experience both professionally as a relationship with our kids, and really try to break it down to those things. And, all kind of comes down to intention and possibility. So I'm sitting with those two big themes as we look to create some really amazing experiences, for my clients, for my patients, for ourselves as a family, and as a couple, kind of moving forward in 2023. So
Beautiful.
thank you for that. With that,
I love that. I love that you're a family man.
Hell yeah.
You know what I mean?
Gotta be.
Gotta be.
It's, yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's so, we can get into a little bit. I mean, fatherhood for me was really hard in the beginning. And I have come a long way in my experience as a father and as a dad. And I'm really proud of the dad that I am and the father that I am and the husband that I am.
Yes.
And I think that shows in the work that I do, both as I relate to my patients, as well as how I relate to my clients as men who are looking to try to find that balance among it all. And that's what it is, right? It's a dance, and we dance with those things. You and I have shared this as well too. And
Yes.
yeah, so I'm a big believer in that.
Beautiful. Adam checking in. I so feel you that it has not been off to a great start. We're only on day 5.
Yeah, I know.
What I mean? And already, the reason that I'm bringing that is because of the realness. Already 5 days into this year, we have been exposed to, in the popular culture, suicide, death of an NFL player on the field. He's not dead, but like the potential for death with athletes having these cardiac arrests. We've been exposed to influencers, taking their own lives and leaving families behind. These type of things, we're still in the darkness of winter. And we know, like, this is New Year. However, it's not new, and it may not even be the beginning of the year. We understand these things, right? The real beginning is more around that spring solstice coming up in March. When the birds and the bees and the bunnies are coming back out. But we're still in the darkness of it.
Yeah.
And I feel it in my house. I feel it in my home. I feel the stress relationally. And I'm attuned in a way that I know that when I'm feeling it, not that it's like an outside in, like the outside is creeping into my house or anything, that it's just something that's happening in the collective. Relationships are being strained right now. Finances are being strained. Where our attention is going to is largely kind of into turmoil, I feel. And so I want to just acknowledge that we're still in the depth of winter. We're still allowing the old to die off, even though we've, made some resolutions and some commitments. And that shouldn't stop us from that. But I'm still, in my world, it's like I got to hunker down even more around my family because of what's happening outside. Yeah. And so that's what I'm checking in with. I guess I'm also checking in with a deep amount of gratitude for Hannah, for Johan, for Holland, for Noah, for my brothers, for the extended family that is allowing me to truly thrive in these times. Because amidst the chaos, amidst the turmoil, I feel a true sense of thriving. So with that, I'm in. And I just want to start right here is, what is a urologist? And what inspired you? Like, truly, at the depth of who you are, what inspired you to become a urologist?
Yeah. So I get this question a lot, right? So what is a urologist and why the hell did I choose this field? So I'll answer with a story. So I have come from a medical family, right? So my father is a physician. My mother's a nurse. My aunts and uncles are all nurses. So I was always around healthcare growing up, and I always knew I wanted to help people. I had no idea what that looked like or how it looked like. And then I played sports all through high school, and in college, I played football. And so most of the time, athletes who go into medicine, they go into orthopedics, right? It's kind of a typical, if you're going to be a physician as an athlete, you go into orthopedics, you deal with sports injuries a lot and those type of things. And when I was in medical school, I started doing some rotations in orthopedics, and I didn't really like the surgeries. I didn't like the patient interactions. It wasn't my thing, right? It was like very much of like, if we got to fix this and do this and then kind of get the patient on. And there wasn't a lot of depth to it. And then my first clinical rotation was in medicine. And I really connected with the patients more than I thought I was going to, and the stories that they had, and really that more kind of humanistic quality of medicine that I really liked. But I always loved the procedures and the skills and the surgery side of it. So urology is this really unique field where we can do medicine and we medically manage patients as well as surgeries. And I've done really large surgeries, like huge surgeries that in my training, and we do small surgeries. You kind of
what would an example of a huge surgery be?
So for urology, some of the biggest surgeries we can do is we can remove someone's bladder and then we recreate that bladder using intestines.
Wow.
So
Then what's a small scale surgery?
small scale, like a circumcision or like a vasectomy or one of those kind of more smaller outpatient procedures.
I'm gonna put a note on that. Let's talk about circumcision today.
Deal. Um, so yeah, so really, the field of urology and the breadth of urology can really run the gamut. And I love the ability to take patients through an entire issue that they were having, right? We can talk about it in the office, we can do medical management, we can also do surgical management of things. And I was really able to see the patient through the whole kind of arc of care.
Yeah.
And I really liked working with men and dealing with personal issues for men. Even as a med student, right? You go in, you talk to patients. I felt like I could, now I have terminology for it, right? I can hold space for men. I can hold and be that person just to sit and listen, right? And I can make people feel really comfortable and sharing openly, honestly with me things that they might not feel comfortable talking to other physicians about.
Or their friends or their partner, I mean,
for sure.
I imagine this is a space for men where this is almost as real as it gets.
Yeah. I mean, like they're here and I'm like, I walk in every single patient interaction. How can I help you? Like, not like I don't come in with an agenda. I don't come in to tell them what to do. It's like, how can I help? What's going on? Right. And then I have the opportunity to sit back, again, hold space and just listen to their story, listen to what brings them in here and how I can kind of help navigate that. And so, dealing with urology, men's health, these very personal issues, I felt really connected with being able to kind of get guys through that journey process.
Yeah. It's an interesting field, right? And so what are some of the common things? What are some of the common questions you get when guys come in for your services? What are the ones where you get them all the time, and guys maybe are sitting at home listening to this, having these questions right now?
Totally. So, I mean, just what's kind of coming up for me now, just because it happened literally, yesterday, was I have guys come in who are in their 20s or 30s or their 40s, right? And they come in and, they can't keep an erection or like they can't get an erection like they used to. And
really at 20 years old?
What's that?
At 20 years old?
At 20 years old.
Wow.
22-year-old guys, 23-year-old guys, 30 men, men in their 30s, men in their 40s. It happens later too, right? Their 60s and your 70s. But these younger guys, they come in and there's no like Western medical explanation for it, right? Like an erection's about blood flow, right? And we can talk about how the body does that, but erection's all about blood flow. And so, there's no like real Western medical reason to why the blood flow isn't great. And so what was happening is these guys would be coming in and there's no medical explanation for it. But then you start digging a little bit deeper, right? So then you start asking them like, well, how are you feeling about your marriage to your wife? Right? How do you feel about your career? How do you feel? What's your stress like? Are you anxious about all this stuff? And we get to the cycle of these things. So you kind of, again, get to the root of what's going on underneath them. And what I try to do is like connect the dots for these guys, right? The fact that they haven't been to the gym in, 10 years, right? The fact that they're now 30, 40 pounds overweight and they're not 20 and they're not able to get away with things they used to. How can we help to shift some of those lifestyle stuff so that they can actually achieve, the erection they want to achieve or in the life goals that they want to achieve too?
Yeah. And how about stress? Like this is a big one. Like I was saying earlier, financial stress, job stress. Maybe this is something that wasn't present earlier. How does the the most of the men that we work with as Sacred Sons, they're up in their heads.
Totally.
They're anxious and they're stressed out. How does that play into the physiology of it?
Oh, absolutely. So, ED or erectile dysfunction and these type of things, right? They can be physical manifestations of the stress, right? So the way I try to explain to guys is we have two nervous systems in our bodies, right? So we have the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight one. So like that kept us alive when we were cavemen, like running from saber-toothed tigers and predators. And then you have the parasympathetic nervous system, which is like the rest and digest and have sex. And so when we're stuck in like sympathetic overdrive, we're in our head and we're worried about the bills, we're worried about, our marriage not going well, or like our kids and what's happening with them and how our, all of these life stressors, when we're up in our head and this kind of sympathetic overdrive, there's no way our penis works, right? There's literally a physiologic change. The neurotransmitters in our brain and in our body shut down blood flow from our penis and don't allow blood flow to go to our penis. So we have to work, and this is what you guys do so well. What I love is getting out of your head and into your body and kind of taking your stress level chronically like this and dropping it down so that you don't exist here on a daily constant basis, right? You can exist more in that parasympathetic rest and digest, nervous system, so that you're then able to perform at your best, right? Or even just perform in general. So yeah. Stress is a huge impact to these things.
So I imagine just from knowing you that there is kind of a spiritual element to this, let's say. Mm-hmm. And so how can we kind of bring in awareness, consciousness around our energetic center, our sexual center as men? Like, how can we begin to stop asking the questions of like, the end result's not working? How can we begin to kind of hone that in on the whole body? Or maybe I'm going to get to this vasectomy piece here, but what advice do you give your patients?
For men, oftentimes I think we get disconnected from ourselves and our partners, right? That disconnect changes sex from a connective piece to more of a performative piece. And it's the performance that gets us back into our heads, back into that sympathetic nervous system. And so when sex becomes about performing a certain act or fulfilling a certain act, you lose the connection. You're not, both physically and spiritually, right? From like a spiritual center. But when sex becomes a way of connecting and a way of expressing, in my opinion, then you're able to really get into the beauty of sex. And it's not about the performance, it's about moving energy, and it's about maintaining that connection through a physical act. And it becomes way more than just a physical nature, right? It truly can become a mind-blowing opening experience, both for you as a man and for your, partner, man or female. So it can be a beautiful experience in that way.
Yeah, I love that. On the other side, let's go to the 40 and 50-year-old guys. I'm 42, got 3 kids. I'm not ready to do it just yet, but to snip or not to snip.
That is the question.
That is the question. And I'm not asking you that question, but a lot of guys have this question. Maybe they already have as many children as they would like.
Yeah.
That's a scary procedure. And I imagine that you've performed vasectomies, hundreds, thousands?
Hundreds. I do about 2 to 3 a week for at least the last 5, almost 6 years.
Wow.
A lot.
Wow. And so what's your take on this particular procedure, which again, I feel like this is sacred work you're doing, bro.
So it's so fascinating to me. So I in full disclosure, I have had a vasectomy. So I have 3 kids, and when my youngest...
I have 3 boys and I do not. So I'm still playing the game of risk out here.
They're still planning to get rich. So, Sarah and I, we knew 3 was our number. We felt had three beautiful, healthy children, and we felt complete. So when my youngest Hazel was about 6 months old, I had one of my partners do my vasectomy, and I was nervous as hell.
Yeah.
And it was really weird for me. I mean, I've done so many, and I became really nervous and scared. And so actually, in like to create a more intentional life and to create a more sacred life, which is what, my wife really specializes in, and what we are creating for ourselves and for our family, we actually developed a vasectomy ritual. And so I shared this, and I share it with some friends and some clients and some patients who are into this type stuff. And it really helped ground it for me, this whole experience, right? So really quick on the ritual part of it. So it kind of is 3 parts. And I think so first of all, to get snipped or not to get snipped is totally a personal,
for sure.
It's a personal decision, personal choice. As far as birth control goes, so for a woman tying her tubes, it's much more of an invasive medical procedure.
Right.
For a male doing this, there's way less risk, and it's much more easy for a male to go through this than a female. That's like the Western medical side of this. If you decide to go through with it, there is a way, I think, to honor that transition and honor yourself and your partnership. So the way I see a vasectomy is that you're recommitting to your family, to your wife or your partner, that you're not having any more kids with anyone else, right? Because sure, it can be reversed, but it's not guaranteed to work. And so you're recommitting, this is the biological children that I will have in this lifetime. And that's a big deal. I personally think it should be honored. So the ritual that we
Absolutely.
created,
And what you're saying here is you are surrendering the ability to create life.
absolutely,
as a seed carrier, as a man, you're surrendering that ability, and that's something to be taken seriously. So I love that you're creating ritual around it. With Sacred Sons, where we love to create practices and rituals that help us to deepen into it. So for you personally, did you create the ritual upon your vasectomy?
Mm-hmm.
And so how does creating a ritual around it impact maybe your patients?
Yeah. So I think creating the ritual and having had the experience helps me to connect with them and like what they're going through. Some patients they're more in touch with it, and they're able to articulate the fears that they have. Some are not. Some are just scared and they don't know why. And so again, kind of holding space and being able to talk to them. Yeah, like this is a big deal, right? Like I don't dismiss it. And some guys want to come in and they're like, that's no big deal. Everybody does it, and that's fine. That's how you feel. But like for some guys, that's just a defense mechanism, right? Like we keep things superficial in order to like not feel the depth of a decision sometimes.
Right.
And so, yeah, the ritual was really powerful for me. It helped connect me with my why. It helped me connect with with Sarah, with my kids, and yeah, it was great. And yeah, can I tell you about it?
Sure.
You want to hear about it? So
yeah, absolutely.
so so it was cool. So essentially the night before, Sarah got essentially like a bowl of water, and she honored me as like the kind of the male part of this process of creating our kids. And we recalled like when our children were conceived. We remember at least 2 out of the 3, which was pretty cool. And so we try to recall those times and just really honored like how I took care of Sarah when she was pregnant, because that was a really big initiation for me, watching my wife become pregnant and those things. And so we recalled the births and those really special moments. And then I kind of talked about my fears around this, and you hit on the big one, right? Like no longer procreating, right? Like that was a big fear of mine, taking myself out of that kind of evolutionary game that we're kind of put here to do as men, and create and spread our seed and those type of things. And I also had fears about the pain, even though I'd done it a lot. Like I remember like feeling really nervous about that pain afterwards. And then we like washed all the fears into the water, and I went outside and like chucked the water outside, just kind of like releasing those fears. When I wrote about it, it's also you can write it down and burn it. There's another great way to do it.
Yeah.
And then we really kind of called in what we wanted out of our sex life, right? Like, what are we bringing in, right? When sex is not about procreation or kids, like it becomes about pleasure and connection and fulfillment and love and enjoyment. And then we kind of created what called in what we were looking for. It was really powerful. It was really cool.
Yeah, I think it's the piece that really lands for me is that you acknowledged it and you honored it as a commitment, a further commitment to your family.
Absolutely.
That's such a powerful reframe from, oh, I can't create more life, to I have created, these lives and I'm committed to taking care of them. I mean, I think that's a beautiful sentiment. And in saying that, I don't know if I'll ever do it. Just to be really clear, because I'm like, I have another perspective on it. And I do want to shift right here because let's talk about circumcision. I also didn't circumcise any of my children.
Yeah.
And for many reasons, but also just I believe that we come in here equipped, let's just say. And I don't believe that the modification is necessary. I think it primarily comes from religious practice and also ritual, right?
Right.
That may have been developed about 2,000 to 5,000 years ago, and whether or not that still holds true and the necessity for it. As someone who has performed many hundreds of circumcisions, again, what's your opinion on it? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really controversial, especially these days, right? And so when I did my training in San Francisco, there was actually a bill. I don't remember if it was local or in the state of California, but they actually tried to outlaw circumcisions as genital mutilation. And so, yeah, I think it's really controversial. I think as you mentioned, right, it starts as a religious practice, right? In the Jewish faith, I'm Jewish. And, the benefits back thousands of years ago were primarily health benefits, right? And in today's world, it's a different time.
Yeah, sanitization is completely different.
It's completely different, right? Yes. And so I think a lot of men, like if it's your religious practice, as if it's your cultural practice, like that's totally fine. If you believe in it, like that's 100% okay. My opinion is it's your decisions, your choice, it's your body. It becomes really hard when it's not your body, right? You're making a decision for your son. And that's where there's a lot of gray areas. And I sit with parents and talk about it, because some will see us, as their kids are older, wanting to make these decisions. And I sit with 20 and 30-year-old men who want it. And we talk about why. Sometimes it's for a woman, which is like, yeah, which is really hard. And, sometimes it takes a little bit of time for them to admit that, right? Like a girlfriend.
So it's a cosmetic thing.
It's a cosmetic thing.
Oh, wow.
Right. And sometimes there are medical reasons why, right? Like as you get older, there's definitely medical reasons why. But there's definitely cosmetic things that people want. And, in the United States, like we're very myopic sometimes. Like we think what we see is what the world is like. And the reality is most of the world is not circumcised, even though most of the men in the United States are circumcised. So it's like kind of reframe around that.
I'm circumcised. I grew up thinking that this was just the way dicks looked. I had no experience with it, but I want to say here that in the thousands of brothers that I have worked with, in terms of processing emotions, in terms of taking a look at deeper stories, this can be a wound that young men carry for whatever reason.
Interesting.
Meaning, like if in the rare case that someone has a memory of this, or just has a wound that this was done to them, I have seen that play out into their lives, which creates that cycle of shame and all of the things, right?
Absolutely. And I see that in patients too, actually. And one has come into mind now. He was circumcised as a young boy, which he remembers in another country. And it was a traumatic experience for him,
Yeah.
100%. And when he comes to like talk to me again, in this case, it was about erectile dysfunction, right? Like he recalls that time. And yeah, of course, the shame that brings up for him and like his fear around his penis, and it all feeds back into itself. I mean, these are real things that have real consequences.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know if I
I
answered your question or not, but it's
no,
it's
no.
hard. It's a conversation to have, and there's not one
let
right
me ask
answer.
you this.
Yeah.
This is really what I would want to ask. Is it necessary medically?
No, I don't think so.
Is I don't think so either. There's no other mammals that cut the tips of their penises off. You know what I mean? It's just like it's not a, I don't mean to make light of it. I want someone who's listening to this to consider for the first time, maybe ever, that this practice is not something that we should continue for the sake of continuing it without, quote unquote, doing our research or like understanding for your family, for your child, for your son, for your boyfriend, for your husband, um, that maybe he came into this life as perfect as ever. And that we don't have to continue something that could be seen as genital mutilation of our young men.
Yeah.
As they're born, and I had trouble with the vitamin K foot prick. Okay. When my son Noah was born, we did the vitamin K, and
Yeah.
Even things like that for our babies. Like I want to open the space to question these things.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that because, well, I'm going to get into that. Then I have one comment about the circumcision, but I think you have to be able to question things. And in
Yes.
my opinion, if any medical person, right, tells you that this is the way it has to be, and they don't even listen to your questioning, that is a red flag, an
Yeah.
immediate red flag. You have to, as a physician, I don't know everything. There's, like, it's not possible, right? And we can get into my eyes were blown wide open when my wife told me at 36 weeks that she wanted to have a home birth for our first son. And I was just like, what is
Right.
happening here? I had no idea what was going on. But like there's like you have to have the questioning, and you have to have the why do we do this? Why do we need to give this medication, or why do we need to do this
Yes.
procedure? And if we don't question it, then like what are we really doing here? Why
Yeah.
are we really what's the purpose of being your own autonomous being? So
Yeah. I think we have to question, one, the motives of an industrial society, why we do the things we do the way we do them.
mhm,
And specifically around birth, I had that same experience. My first son was born in the hospital. My second boy was born in the birth center,
mhm,
and Johan was born at home. And even for me, I had we went those steps to get ultimately to what I consider the truth of it, which is a woman's body is made to have babies, and
totally.
their bodies know, and we can hold the space and support. Yes, we had a lovely midwife and a doula, and so we had the actual support to bring Johan through. But at the end of the day, a lot of the intervention that's
Mhm.
put in place and a lot of the things that we consider to be normal are actually the furthest fucking thing from like what our bodies are designed to do. And
That is
that
wild.
is kind of the awakening that is important for men to understand, so that we can hold space not only for ourselves but for our partners, male and female.
Yeah, absolutely. It is wild. And also to like, kind of protect, right? Like the people want to come in and do these things to our family members. And like, as a male protector, like that's our job to
Yes.
like hold that perimeter and be like, are we really doing that? Like, why? What's going on
Well,
over
yeah.
here? And like, oh, and like I mean, shit, like I came, from this medical family, and I went to medical school and like I drank the Kool-Aid, was so indoctrinated with it. Was in my surgical residency. We got pregnant unexpectedly, and we are like going to deliver at the hospital where I was a resident. I knew everybody. And then at like literally 35, 36 weeks, there was like, I want to do a home birth. And like my mind was blown. Like, you got to be fucking kidding me. Like, what are we doing here?
Right.
And, Sarah found an amazing midwife, and I like grilled her, but like it took, and then I realized that, like, oh, that's more natural. That's supporting my wife as opposed to what I was seeing and experiencing in the hospital, both as a medical student
Yes.
through all those, through my OB rotations, those type of stuff. I saw the juxtaposition to it both. My wife's birth story, especially for our first, is like a horror show and was terrible and deserves a whole like
Right.
hour-long discussion, but it was fascinating. We got to heal things both from like the hospital. With my second daughter was actually born in the hospital undesirably, but that was the desire. And then my third one was born at home with no one, just me. So that's
wow. That's quite the journey to get there. And I want to say this, it's only been about the last 100 to 120 years where we have industrialized birth.
Mhm.
And the programming is so instilled in our culture that what's the story most people have about birth? Like, oh, pack the bags, get in the car, go to the hospital, push, 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 baby. Yeah. The reality is it's like so far from that, but we've all seen that play out over and over, that is what we expect, and that's what we then desire.
Yeah.
And so this is an opportunity, like, again, brothers and sisters who are listening, it's time to question. It's time to go inside around all of these things, from surgeries, cosmetic surgeries, all of these things we think and we've been programmed to believe that are necessary. Many of them are not. It's, human beings have been on this planet in this form, let's say 300,000 years, 200,000 years, whatever. The things that we are practicing and doing now that we take as truth have not been around for that long. And so I honor you as a medical professional, and we need you. We need surgeons. We need the men and women who can perform these traumatic surgeries, when there is trauma.
Yeah.
Right. And so it's not to say that we don't need the medical system. I'm not on that at all. I just want individuals to have sovereignty over their bodies and the choices that they make with their bodies and with the bodies, that are being born, that are being birthed.
Absolutely. And I think I love that you say that, right? It's not an indoctrination on the medical system, right? I think so often it gets labeled as that. And like, that's not what this conversation is. And that's not what this mentality is, right? Like, the questioning is not like, now it's all bad, right?
Right.
The questioning is like, let's ask, is this really necessary, right? Are we really doing what we need to be doing? Or is it just doing this because we think we're supposed to be doing it, and this is just what everybody else always done? Even though it's not what we've always done, that's again what we're kind of programmed, or what we're designed to believe. And like, the medical system exists for really good reasons when shit is hitting the fan, right?
Yes.
Like, last summer, my wife was in like 3rd-degree heart block from Lyme, and like her heart was not working, right? Like, and she needed like intensive medical system.
Yes.
Now, and then after that, we talk about healing and support, right? Like, let's get back to how our bodies can actually help heal and recover so that doesn't happen again, right? Like, that is the piece in the medical community that I think is sometimes missing, is like, the bodies know how to heal. How do we help support the bodies to be able to heal? And I think that is huge. And I wish that more of my physicians and surgeons pay a little bit more time and attention to supporting that healing after the traumatic surgery, after the traumatic infection, or whatever it is, because that's really important.
Yeah. I want to go deeper into the fear. I want to talk about testicular cancer. I remember I was about like 15 years old, and I watched this Tom Green episode where I don't know if you remember Tom Green. He had a show on MTV.
Oh yeah.
This comedian, and he
Yep.
had testicular cancer. He showed the surgery like live on television, and he wrote a song called "Feel Your Balls." And I remember it vividly. And I actually, at some point in my journey, maybe in my early 20s, I had felt something in my balls, and I went and got it checked out. It was like, for me, it was a big deal at a young age.
Yeah.
It turned out to be nothing. But what are some of the signs of testicular cancer, and what words of inspiration do you have for brothers to check on themselves? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And again, kind of very topical conversation, but regarding testicular cancer, right? I mean, the biggest sign or symptom is really just feeling something in your testicles, right? So they could feel something is hard, or there's a lump, you're like, shit, what is that? Right. And I think what a lot of men do because of the fear or the shame, they say, I did something wrong. Right. And I'm like, don't want to talk about that down there. Right. So they ignore it. Right. And they delay it. And weeks or months goes by before they actually bring it to a parent's attention or their doctor's attention, or they have a physical, and then 6 months, and I'll talk about it then with my doctor. And so they ignore that feeling, the physical feeling that they have, and the intuition like that something's not quite right here, right? The other one that happens is you can get testicular torsion, right? So that's when the testicle actually twists. So yeah, I say it's topical because this just happened to a patient in the emergency room for me a week ago. 14-year-old kid. Wow. His testicle twisted, and he had pain for 2 days without saying a word to his parents because he felt ashamed, right? He thought he was doing something wrong. Maybe he was masturbating, maybe he wasn't, but that was probably what he was worried about, them thinking.
Right.
And we did emergency surgery for him, and testicle was not salvageable, right? So the blood flow had been cut off for 2 days, and we couldn't save the testicle. So it sucks. He's gonna be fine, right? From like a medical standpoint, it was normal testosterone. He'll be able to, have kids when he gets older. But like, he went through a major trauma and now has one testicle. And so then there's that repair work that, is important to do, and the reassurance that like, yes, you're going to be okay. You're normal. It's good, but yeah, so feel your balls, men out there. And if something doesn't feel right,
I guess here's kind of like a bridge between your work and our work. It's like, yes, feel your balls, feel your feelings.
Totally.
And then communicate them. Because it's not enough to just feel it and hold it in. This is, in fact, creating more potential for stress and for like the story that you just shared.
Absolutely.
It's important that we feel safe enough. So I guess if we're speaking to parents and moms and dads, cultivate a relationship where your children feel confident enough to come to you and speak. I think that's our primary role in one way, right? It's like to be available and to, in this case, like hold space for our children when something is not right. Totally. And to not create a situation where we're bringing shame into it at all. And I think that can be challenging as parents.
Yeah, for sure. But it's that connection piece, right? It's a connection with your kids so they feel safe enough to have that communication, right? If they don't feel safe with you to communicate, you and I have young kids, but like even now, right? I know as my son is getting into the age where like his friends are becoming more important than his family. And like, I want him to feel comfortable and safe enough to communicate, like when his friends are like either bullying him or they're not like, they're excluding him or whatever it is, right? Like, do you want them to be able, I want my son Marshall to be able to feel comfortable coming and talk to me about that. That's huge.
Dude, it's huge. My son, the bullying thing is real. God, it's so real. And I think it's not even intentional. I think this is just, a byproduct of human behavior, also learned by the programming that we watch, that it's like, this is what people do. We fight, we argue, and we're loud, because that's like largely what television and cartoons are. It's like loud shouting and chaos. And, my son got in the car, he's 8, he's in 2nd grade. And something I can tell, like, hey, what's up, man? He's like, oh, the guys in my class were saying I look like a girl. Noah he has hair down to his shoulders, about ear length. And I have hair down to my butt. So it's the first thing I say is like, hey, your daddy's got long hair. Nobody's calling him a girl. Don't worry. Yeah. But also it's like, it's not about that. It's about me listening to him and his feelings, and like really listening. It comes to the point, like, cool. Do you want to get a haircut, or do you want to keep rocking your long hair? And like, we know who you are, know who you are, and reinstilling those pieces. And so he's still got long hair. But it's like, for now, and that may change. But the point is, like, he felt okay enough in the moment to tell me somebody thought he looked like a girl.
Absolutely.
And I want that. I want that level of openness from my children as we get into those later years.
Yeah. Because it starts with long hair, but then it becomes about, drugs or alcohol or whatever it is. And if you can't talk about long hair, you're sure as hell not going to talk about the drugs or the alcohol. Right. I think it's beautiful. And I've watched, you a little bit as a father. I've watched Kareem as a father, just as examples of this, and really trying to honor the father who's like just supporting their kid's own development, right? Not trying to turn them into mini me's or whomever we want them to be, right? Or fitting some sort of mold or standard. Like, I remember feeling like I had to try to fit in as a kid a lot, and in order not to be bullied, as opposed to like, being supported to be myself. And my parents are good about letting me be myself, but there's still that pressure to like, fit in. But the fact that you gave your son the ability to like choose, and he chose himself, right, just really speaks volumes for how he sees himself and how, he knows that you see him, which is super cute.
Yes. So, yeah, I appreciate that. So let's get weird with it. Like, this is all good and deep and real. And again, like the reality of the stress of what we're all facing is present. But what's some of like the more crazy things that you have witnessed? I have to imagine there's been balls and zippers. There's been Bics ripped off. What are we talking about?
How crazy do you want to get?
I just want to hear them. I want to hear some stories.
So fair enough. This is like when I was a resident, these are like the best party stories. So, my MO as a resident, I would roll up. First of all, like I was exhausted as a resident. I was working like, 80 plus hours a week. And so I would roll to a party, and the way I would do it is Sarah, would go to the party and I would meet her there. I'd take a nap in the corner. So that was like me always in the corner taking a nap. And then I'd wake up like half an hour later and start talking about all these stories. So let's see. So there's definitely a zipper a ball in the zipper, scrotum in the zipper. Like there's something about Mary that actually happened. And I had to like cut out the piece of that skin, sew it back up.
That must be like the most traumatizing experience.
Oh, it gets better.
I mean, I've come close.
Yeah.
You ever like you get the pinch on the zipper?
Like, I should not there. So yeah, that definitely happened. I had a guy who used a metal like circle cut piece of like a scissor, like so the thumb hole is like a cock ring, and then got it stuck. And so I had to get the like circular saw from the San Francisco Fire Department.
Oh my God.
Like saw off the metal handle. Cock ring on his penis while it's like, he's sitting there awake.
Oh my
like,
God.
Can I go to sleep? I'm like, nope.
You're there watching.
Can you imagine like a saw coming down?
Was it like a circular saw?
Yeah.
Or like a little, oh my God, dude.
So I had like my junior resident, like, it heats up, right? Because it's like metal, so it gets hot. So you got to like keep it cool, like putting water on it. So it's like it was a whole thing.
I mean, I imagine also like, listen, I know young men. I was in, I was in sports teams. I was in bands. I'd like know there's crazy stuff that young dudes do with their penises. It's fucking crazy, but it's like it's a part of the exploration of the limits and the edges of.
There you go.
Yeah. What have you seen people like? I don't even want to say that. I don't want to say.
That's right. I mean, there's a couple, famous guys in our residency program in San Francisco who would get high on meth and like put things inside their penis. So like pencils or like batteries. Then you got to go in and take it out.
Literally the batteries is what I've known of that kind of a story. See? Fucking crazy.
It's crazy, and people do it. I have one guy shoot himself in the testicles. 2 guns.
Oh my!
Boom, boom.
Like they were holstered or pointing.
Yeah, it was in their
what
pocket.
happened?
I think it was in his pocket or something like that, and like guns just went off and shot testicles. Boom, boom.
Wow. What do you even do for something like that? Do you give them some fake balls or?
You can. There's fake testicles out there. This guy did not. He has like small nub in his testicles. He was
talk about a vasectomy. He was like, you know what? I'm just doing this right now.
Yeah. So those are some of the good ones. You give me some more time, I'll think about some more. But
no, sure. That's good. That's good. I mean, let's bring it back around in a good way. But it's like, yes, feel your balls, know yourself.
Yeah.
Lay off the pornography and get connected in reality to your partner.
100%.
Like I also know from the men that I work with how just really terrible pornography is for our culture, for society, for young men. And when I was growing up, it wasn't the same access. It wasn't in my pocket 24/7. It was like the occasional VHS from my older brother, the dirty magazine in the woods or something, like very, very rare encounters with this stuff,
Yeah.
And now, 10 to 13-year-olds have access and even younger. This is where it gets, into more terrible circumstances. But in your way, how would you encourage someone to know themselves and to know how their body and maybe not fall into some of these traps?
Yeah, I mean, it's first of all, it's hard, right? It's like this kind of drug that's always right there and so easily accessible, right? I mean, pornography, the dopamine hits that you get, from looking at porn all the time, and the complete, disassociation from reality, right? Yes. So kind of bringing it back to the urology world, right? I'll have men come see me who like they don't feel turned on by their partner in a physical relationship because they're used to the porn world of, whatever it is that they're watching, and that's their reality. That's where they have to get to in order to feel turned on. Like that is not healthy by any means, as you mentioned. It's different than like the dirty magazine or, the occasional video here or there. It's just a very different reality that so many guys live in. And so, I think helping guys understand that that's a problem, right? Because so often it's just kind of accepted in our society that this is the way it is. So identifying that.
Don't you find it's a little, this is the way it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's like one of the only things that's like fully free and accessible all over the internet. It's almost like, who's allowing that?
It's crazy.
You can't even I can't even buy a UFC fight. I can't watch the UFC without paying $70. Why are we putting this content out there in a way that's so haphazard and so loose when it's been shown over and over again, there's ways to absolutely like hone in, restrict. And I don't mean that in a way of limiting freedom. Don't get me wrong. And as parents, this is another place where we have the responsibility to step in and take action.
Absolutely.
But for society at large, we have to question these things. Why do we have this access?
Yeah. Why? Right. So for patients, like I try to explain and talk to them about like, all right, like there's actually some pretty decent books out there about like kind of getting off of porn and quitting porn and how, and
Sure.
the intellectual effects of it. And so I think that's helpful for my guys, for my patients. And then most of the time I find with my patients, it's, you go to that, whether it's porn or alcohol or drugs, because of a wound or because you're not getting something in your own life. Right. So it's like helping them to identify what is they're not getting in their own life, fulfillment in their own relationships and sex in a marriage. Why is that? Well, I have 3 kids and I haven't been on a date in 6 months. And like, my wife won't even look at me, or she yells at me all the time because, this is the way our life is. And yeah, it's way easier going to porn than to like look at my marriage and fix my marriage. Right. So it's like identifying for them what it is that they're missing in their own life to then be able to like work on that aspect. So porn doesn't become as attractive for them anymore. Is it really kind of,
Yes. And you can read this in a book, or you can experience it through fortitude.
oh,
So you know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
So
yeah.
Dr. Jonathan has got an experience coming up on the East Coast called Fortitude. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing, and this is the work, right? It's like,
Yeah.
let's ask the hard questions, let's face the reality that we're in, and let's get in the forge and become better men. Why do you want to bring fortitude through for your men?
Thank you so much for that question. So, fortitude, this experience for me, stepping into this part of it, right? So it's an initiation for me, right? As a leader in this work, stepping into another version of myself and leading men in this in-person experience. It's different than the online work that I do. It's different than, the online men's coaching work that I do. Fortitude is about kind of remembering and kind of unveiling your own inner strength and inner power. I feel like so much, it's like an initiatory experience into remembering who we are, working with like the elements that, with Massachusetts, it's going to be cold. We're going to be outside, really kind of doing some of that, physical movement warrior type practices to get really grounded and to remember that, like, we can do hard shit, right? Like,
Yes.
we can do hard things. And, when I push myself on a workout, or like when I do a cold plunge, I literally feel like I'm going to die. I'm not, but that's the feeling. And so, when I'm in a freaking ring of fire at Sacred Sons getting punched in the face, over and over again, and I got to get back up, right? I got to get back up. And so like when life keeps throwing shit at you, you got to keep getting back up. So it's these type of practices that help you get back up. But we will not be doing any punching in the face in my retreat.
Cool. Fortitude, a retreat for men to rediscover and reestablish their purpose, strength, and community. It's happening February 11th through 12th, 2023, out in Massachusetts, Hawthorne Farm. That's your property there?
That's the property there. We got it.
Our brother Kareem Manuel is co-leading. Let's
Hell
go.
Yeah. It's gonna be awesome. Yeah, Kareem's co-leading. It's gonna be fucking great. I'm super stoked. We have woods, we have fields, we have lakes. I got a lake here. It's gonna be dope. So
there's more work to do, and there are more men, and I truly feel there are going to be men who are attracted to fortitude, to what you bring, that maybe don't resonate with the sacred yet. They're not ready quite to jump into Sacred Sons for many reasons. And there's no shame in that. It's just that, like, this is about resonance. And so I want to encourage brothers on the East Coast, especially, this is the time. We're here. February's coming up. What is the new way of being that you would like to fortify your life with? How can we as men not only confront and challenge each other, but show up and support each other? I feel like that's the community piece that so many of our brothers and sisters are missing. And so bringing it through in this way so that we can truly, be our best, be our most fortified is powerful, man. It's powerful work.
I appreciate it. And, it's been beautiful kind of creating this and feeling so much partnership with Kareem and doing this. And, you know, I mean, you and I have talked about this before, but just feeling the support of the Sacred Sons community and not feeling like, you know, there's so much of the work that needs to be done, the work that you guys do, you know, it's all in service to men rediscovering themselves and who they are, right? There's no one way to do it. There's no right way or wrong way. It's just who you are and how you can be most expressing yourself. It's fucking awesome.
Yeah, man. And you're a surgeon. You're already a leader in one way. How does it feel for you to lead men? I mean, it's a different edge when you're not, like, I guess I'd say it like this, someone comes in to your office, that's one kind of dynamic, right? And you hold many keys. And so this is an expansion of that. And I feel like it has more depth even in some ways.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a big edge, right? I mean, I used to, you know, my own stories, like I used to, like, I would put on my like doctor hat here, and then I put on my like men's work hat here, and my dad hat here, and my husband hat here. And like those were the different kind of, I would jump back and forth. And like it was exhausting, right? It was so hard to keep myself separate for all these different, you know, things that I do. And now I try to like be all of me, and I still work at it. Like I'm not good at it all the time, obviously, but like I try to like show up and be all of myself as a physician, as a surgeon, as a husband, as a dad. And like all these things are woven in, and how I show up as a father is impacted when I show up as my best self at work. And when I show up as a leader in this community, I'm my best self as a physician and then as a husband too. And so they're all interwoven and intertwined. And I think men are looking for, at least I am looking for men who are able to kind of go to these different worlds and just be all of themselves. I think it's really powerful. It's been very powerful for me finding how I can be the most expressed in these different areas.
Beautiful. Again, Fortitude's happening February 11th and 12th. Yeah, Jonathan, I feel like, I want to call you back in. I want to, create a conversation here, and maybe even next time we'll take some questions from the Sacred Sons audience directly, and just kind of ping back and forth. These conversations are helpful for so many because of the shame, because of the inability to ask the questions that maybe so many want to ask. And so thank you for, the time and the dedication that you've put into your professional career, so that you're a wisdom keeper in this way as well. So I appreciate your perspective, and you bring in the masculine alchemy leadership. It's powerful. And it's powerful for us to have you as an ally in our community.
Oh, thanks, Adam. I mean, I love being part of the Sacred Sons community. I love being part of the 33 and the leadership. And it's fucking awesome. So I'm stoked to be here.
If you're a man out there who's feeling this and you want to join this community on the other side, a year-long program, the 33, go to sacredsons.com, click on the 33. For now, Jonathan, is there any message, any piece of inspiration that you would like to leave with the brothers and sisters who are listening?
I want to think about that for a second.
Yeah. For the dads. Bring it for the dads.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah. So, first of all, thank you for that question. I think so. What I'd love to leave the men here with is, if something's not right? We talked about testicular cancer. Something doesn't feel right in your testicles, but something doesn't feel right in your life. Get into action around it, right? So often, I spend so much time worrying up here in my head without getting into action. And the biggest shift and change that I have felt in my own life has been when I get out of my head and get into action. And for me, that looks like a quick workout in the morning, push-ups, burpees, whatever it is to get myself moving, get out of my head and into my body, into action. And things flow so much better from that state. So if things don't feel right in your life, in your marriage, with your children, in your own self, in your own body, out of your head and into action. That's the flow that has helped me so much in my own life, to move from this process of like stagnation and concern and worry and fear into more movement. So with that.
Beautiful. Feel your balls. Get into action. Men, it's time to take action in your life. With that, Jonathan, Brajtbord, Fortitude, Adam Jackson, Sacred Sons, we're out, family. Peace.